DragCast, episode 184. We are talking to Jared, Harris and Allegra Riggio. Here we go. We're gonna have some fun. Let's do it now. Let's have a conversation on DragCast with Nina West and Patricia Taylor. Welcome to another episode of DragCast with Nina West. I am so excited to introduce this next episode. Our special guests are the incredible and amazing talented actor Jared Harris and his amazing, insanely beautiful, and incredible wife, Allegra Riggio. Enjoy. Welcome back to DragCast with Nina West. We are joined by two incredible friends who are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we have in live via not quite satellite, Allegra Riggio and Jared Harris.
Hi.
Hello, welcome.
Hi. The magic of the internet while we still have it at our beck and call.
Exactly.
So if you live under a rock and you don't know, Allegra is a writer and producer involved in television and film, and Jared is an award-winning actor, and you may know him from a million things, including Fringe, Mad Men, The Crown, and Chernobyl, for which he received an Emmy nomination.
Most of my fans live under rocks, so we're good there.
That's why I came out from under a bridge to do this interview.
Thank you guys both for being here.
Thank you
both.
So we're being trolled right now.
Yes.
Yes, you're being trolled.
A little bit.
Just a little bit from a big man.
Big troll.
Open up the bridges so people could get to and fro with all of the fun stuff that's going on now.
Yeah, where are you? Where are you right now? Are you in Los Angeles?
We are in LA in our house above the Sunset Strip, over looking down over West Hollywood.
Oh gosh, is it? How's it been so far?
It's been the quietest we've seen Boys Town ever. There's a curious lack of thumping bass.
What are you gonna do?
I'm going to pump my own bass, and then the neighbors will just have to listen to my playlist. Yes, the last 2 days have been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been neighbors that we've never seen because people aren't as friendly as they used to be, who are now out and about walking in pairs of quarantined twos, bopping by to whatever the hell I'm playing, and some girl screamed out, "I love that playlist!" And I said, "It's Carl Cox, 2019 from Glastonbury. Find it on SoundCloud. Come back tomorrow."
That is so fun. Oh my god.
So really, in all of this madness that's kind of going on in the world right now, how are you both finding yourselves, and what's this kind of self-isolation and quarantine been like for both of you?
It's remarkably similar to the life of an unemployed actor.
It really is.
Which is what you are now, right, darling? Yes, It's happened.
It's like, I remember this. I went through once in England 18 months unemployment, so I'm fully geared for what's coming.
Yes, the actors are prepared, and I tend to be prepared because I'm from New York, but I grew up in Florida, so I prepared the house as if a Category 5 hurricane was coming. So,
oh yeah,
Jared reaps the benefits of that, and I reap the benefit of him being home because he was gone for the greater part of the last 3 years shooting The Terror and Chernobyl and Carnival Row. So
yeah.
You've been nothing but nonstop busy. So let's get right to it.
While the sun shines.
I mean, yeah, while the sun shines, yes.
Yep.
The sun always shines on Jared.
It does seem to. You seem to. You do seem, Jared. You seem to have this amazing career that really seems to maybe not have been what you wanted initially. You've worked so hard. You've become this amazing, amazing, beloved actor. But really, how did you find acting?
What was I going with at the beginning then? If I didn't want to be that, I'm just. What did I say something in an interview where I was like, I want to be undiscovered and broke. I want to be the Van Gogh of actors, discovered after I'm gone. That's the one thing about acting is you have to be. It has to be in your timeline, Otherwise, it's not like you leave work behind for people to discover afterwards. It's
right.
You have to be relevant in the time that you live in. So
you're so relevant, darling.
Thank you so much. I didn't in the beginning. I sort of was pursuing a career in really inspired by the movies of the 70s, and foolishly thought that somehow that would still be there when I got into the business. Of course, it had disappeared.
The 70s?
The films of the 70s, yeah, the movies that they're the kind of personal films that the directors were making in the 70s. And so yeah, and it, interestingly now that's all possible because there's so much content out there. You can't follow blueprints that the studios cling to in the hope that somehow it guarantees success, and they're taking risks. So yeah, it's been fun these last. I mean, really, yeah. Everyone keeps trying to decide where this started or who started it, and was it Mad Men? Was it The Sopranos? Was it The Wire? Was it? But I mean, wherever this idea of peak television started from, it's allowed storytellers to tell very personal stories, which is, of course, what the movies of the 70s were all about. They were personal stories that the directors were making.
Yeah. Do you think that like television is a better medium for that, or just a different medium? Like, why is it TV now that seems to be doing that instead of film?
Well, I've answered this question, so I'm sorry for repeating myself elsewhere. But the studios gave up on trying to entertain, interest, or market to adults. They are interested in kids and the sort of 17 to 24, 25-year-old market, the big superhero films, which I love. And I go and see them, and we watch them, and we enjoy them. But they basically gave up on an adult audience, adult stories that rely on you having had an experience of life for you to understand the resonances in the story. And television has stepped into that, and it's sort of perfectly for it because adults find it harder to get out. So it was a kind of it was always there in a way, and that the idea now, because of the streaming platforms, it's not being controlled just by the three networks. There's this huge explosion of content that's geared towards these people who are basically who are there at home, desperate for something that speaks to them and speaks to their experience of life. That's what I think has happened.
That's a good thought, dear.
Thank you.
I also think that the accessibility, just like Jared was saying, to expound upon it, the accessibility has become so vast that it's just easier to see. And by the way, everybody's turned into such a dick out in the real world. It's so much easier to just stay home and avoid the crazy drivers and the selfish people and the people who push and shove when you're at the shops. Just stay home. As Ted Sarandos coined, Netflix and chill. And here we are. It's the apocalypse. It's like we were geared for this. Like all these people have been working so hard to keep us at home and turn us into odd people like the Matrix. Well, here we are. And on the bright side, it's the second golden age of television. So we have no end of stuff to watch. My parents are watching a Turkish soap opera. And guess what? They don't speak that language, but they're super into it, and it's on Netflix.
Right.
That's amazing. Right. I think I think that it's been said, it's kind of said so much, it's a cliche. We are in like a golden age of television. It seems like, Jared, you're in all of the shows that applies to.
He's such a show off.
Yeah, he is a show off. I thought I first became aware of you watching Mad Men, but it turned out like I've seen all of these films that you were in. But was Mad Men really how did Mad Men, being on Mad Men, affect like your career and where it is now?
Well, I know that Mad Men led to Sherlock Holmes,
which is I love the film.
So sexy.
When they were trying to make a deal with Daniel Day-Lewis and then Sean Penn, and a week before the movie was going to start, I guess they hadn't been able to get those guys, and then so they'd spoken to me in June. Just basically, I was there in their back pocket as their safety in case they couldn't make it work out. And they didn't make it work out. And I got a call the week before shooting started, go to London, go meet Guy, audition for him. And, the part will be yours, but you have to go to London and go meet Guy and go and audition for him. So, I did. and then auditioning is if you won't audition as an actor on principle, you're never going to work.
Right.
So it's the wrong principle to have.
But
the wrong hill to die on.
It certainly is.
Then I'd say that what? Then I'd say that Mad Men led to Lincoln. Spielberg, when I met him, he talked about Mad Men, and I guess there had been some nervousness about casting two Englishmen as the two presidents
I liked
in
it.
the movie.
Daniel is Irish, isn't he?
No, he's English. But anyway, that he wanted to. He was reassured by the work on Mad Men that I guess I wouldn't mess it up. And then, but Mad Men came from Benjamin Button. So if you're going to wind backwards, Benjamin Button was the one that kind of started this sort of second period. And my first period of a career, if you like, was in New York independent films from, I guess, starting with the Andy Warhol movie. And then, there was a good little run in that for a while, for about 10 years. And then that kind of petered out and people stopped going to see independent films, or they weren't having trouble competing with the big blockbuster movies. And they were getting relegated to small cinemas, with one or two screens. Hang on, Allegra's waving her hand.
I'm raising
she
my
wants
hand.
me to shut up.
I'm raising my hand so I can interject. Darling, would you say that the independent film scene, especially in New York in the 90s, was something along the lines of the movies of the 70s?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very academic. I'm learning a lot. I wanted to know.
Can I say one thing about Mad Men, please? It was also Jared's first reoccurring role on a television show.
True, yes.
Before then, he had done guest starring roles. Like sometimes,
very few.
Sometimes when you're watching Jared's mentions on the socials, as I do, like a hawk, Nina, like a hawk. Whenever the rerun of Jared on Law and Order SVU comes on, the internet folks are like, "What the deuce?" There's an episode.
I play a serial killer.
But he's already in jail.
I've been captured, and I'm sort of I'm tutoring isn't the wrong word. I'm sort of mentoring Shannon Woodward, who's a kind of protege.
Don't tell everybody that when this.
I'm not going to tell the whole story, but that's there quite early on in the whole setup.
I think
there's a series of copycat killings going on, and so anyway.
They trot him out of jail, and he, has his stage because he claims he finds himself sort of an artist. Anyway, the point is, you're going to look out for Jared on that. But he did a lot of stars and before Mad Men, and so Mad Men was his real entree into like actual, what'd you call it, procedural television here?
Well, I didn't even sign a contract the first year. It was just episode to episode.
Well, they were smart to keep you on because Lane Price was the best.
You know what I mean? That's probably why I got. Vinnie Kartheiser said after I got killed off on that show, I went for
spoiler.
Allegra and I went for and Vinny went, Jared, it's your own fault that you've been killed off this show. I said, what are you talking about, Vinny? He says, you were supposed to be an antagonist for Don Draper, but your vanity wouldn't allow you to be that. And let me tell you something. Matt told me that you don't kill off your bad guy. He said, so if you'd stayed as a bad guy, you'd still be on the show, but you turned him into a likable character. So it's your fault.
Because Matt used to get to know his actors really well, and he would write, facets of who they really were into their characters. Like you guys watched Mad Men, right?
Yeah, I loved Mad Men.
Well, do you remember when Joan out of nowhere starts playing an accordion?
I'm trying to remember that moment.
Christine Hendricks, I think it was at a dinner party or something.
Yeah, it was at a dinner party.
It must have been at her own house because there was an accordion. Well, anyway, Christina Hendricks, fun fact, plays the accordion in real life.
So what tidbit from your life, one or two tidbits from your life that made it onto the screen in Mad Men?
There were two things that he initially he was toying with the idea that Lane was Jewish, because he wanted there to be a glass ceiling to his achievements, and that's what came up in that episode. Guy walks into an advertising agency, the one where he gets his foot chopped off by the John Deere tractor.
That was so good.
And the idea that Lane's got as far as he can within this company, he's going to be shipped off to India. And that's the turning point in Lane's mind, as why he's going to jump ship and join the Americans and set sail. It just reminded me of the movie, the Monty Python film, that The Meaning of Life, where the Crimson Alliance takes off and the whole building goes on Anyway, sorry. So I've lost my train of thought.
No. So Lane was going to go on again. He was supposed to be Jewish, maybe.
So then Matt said, but I don't really know if you're believable
as a Jew?
as a Jewish person. Yes. So then I said, well, look, you don't. In terms of a glass ceiling, there's one already there. It's the class system in England, and it all depends on where you went to school and what you sound like. That line about going to school made it into the second episode of my season. Where his wife wants to go back to England, and she's come to ask for cab fare, and she doesn't like it, and he says that he likes it here because no one's ever asked me what school I went to. And then I remember that last season talking to Matt about the idea of when he explained to me what was going to happen to Lane. And that I said, we were talking about the idea of why Lane does what he does. And I said, it's a very specific thing when someone leaves home and tries to make a life for themselves somewhere. It's the idea of going back home, having not succeeded. It's almost that's a worse idea than any other option. That's the humiliation of going back home with your tails between your leg, having failed, is so awful that almost any other option is preferable.
Especially if people didn't believe in you. Yeah. And we saw the episodes with Lane and his father, and how his father strongly disapproved of his lifestyle in New York.
Yeah. Obviously the thing about that show, I remember my agent saying they want you to come in and read, and he said, obviously Mad Men at that time was a big show in terms of it had got such critical acclaim, but even though the viewing numbers weren't big for it, everybody in the industry watched that show.
Mm-hmm. It changed headlines, and I mean that seriously. We got men back into suits, y'all. We got
that's right.
doing their hair up again. People stopped being so sloppy looking, and it was great.
And the cocktail culture.
Oh, the cocktail culture! Right now, it's the middle of the afternoon.
That is right.
During the apocalypse, I'm drinking some rosé.
Do you remember when we went to go do the interview for Men in Blazers?
Yes.
Every office had a drinks trolley.
Really?
Mad Men.
It was fantastic. Every office had a drinks trolley. Yeah.
Super Mad Men. The Men in Blazers. They do an amazing podcast. It's all about British football / as we would call it, soccer, and they loved Lane Price. But it was a great show with Jared. I met Jared when he was on that show.
During Mad Men.
Yes, but I hadn't started watching it yet because I had just moved to LA, and whatever. All of my New York friends were super into it, but. Yeah, I met him. You were just starting your second season of that, I think. We just finished season 1. Yeah. So you were just starting your second.
The second one didn't start until the summer.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, when I met both of you, we met at, was it an Emmys party first? Was it a party pre-Emmys week?
It was such a busy party week. Remember when we used to be able to see each other in public and hug, you guys?
I remember meeting you both. It seemed like there was something like you both kind of hold on to a different kind of level of class. Like you said, you brought Mad Men was responsible for bringing back kind of the cocktail culture, or dressing up, and everything was more of an occasion. Meeting you both felt really like relaxed, comfortable, yet it felt like something. You both kind of exude this wonderful quality of just being a life of a party almost,
We're the occasion. The Jersey Shore had the situation. We have the occasion.
You are the I would say Allegra and Jared, you are the occasion. I mean, there was something that was.
We're going to start a podcast, Nina and Pat. We're going to call it The Occasion at Team Harris. And everybody has to get dressed up. You have to get dressed up, even though you can't see us.
And have a cocktail.
I love that.
That's right.
I mean, have you both always been that way? And is this why you're
adorable? I would say I was born adorable.
I'd say that's true, and I would say that I'm sort of lured out to events and by Allegra, and I'm a little bit more. I can get sort of comfortable at home, and I can. So I'm very much appreciative of the idea of that Allegra loves. She's very, very friendly, incredibly sociable,
amazing,
very, very generous and open-hearted. She's got a fantastic, not just personality, but a approachable quality to her. So I'm the beneficiary of that when we go out.
So far, all of those things are correct. Ding, 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 ding. Well, my background is I'm a party person. I used to build nightclubs. I'm a lighting designer. So my natural habitat is a party. So when I met Jared, he was definitely the guy who stood in a sort of like off the way corner and wouldn't move.
I would end up talking to people in one spot.
Because I would do a lap, Nina and Pat. Should I call you Pat, Patricia, or Patty?
I go by Patricia, but we,
we'll
Pat.
We'll take Pat.
I don't.
You guys are allowed.
You can call me whatever. I'll answer.
My mother's name is Patricia, so that's easy. But yeah, like Jared would stay in one corner, so I would know where he always was. I always have one eye on him, and then I would work the room one way, see who was everywhere on that side, stop for a drink, and then come back the other way and see who was on that side. And then I would either bring people to Jared or grab him by the hand and say, "We're gonna move about 10 steps to the left in about 5 minutes."
Don't panic.
And he was like, "I don't want to."
No. Well, I just because I've been involved in a chat with people.
Now you move around
where
I do. You're wearing all kinds of colors. You're the life of the party. Yeah.
Well, not quite.
You've wandered off, and I can't even find you. I have to call security and say, "Who has eyes on the king?" And everybody knows what I'm talking about because everybody's seen The Crown.
Yes, well, I have to tell you this though. Like, for me, it was my first big Hollywood party, and I had somehow met you both, and you both kind of.
No, we were so excited to meet you. We could see you from across the room.
We met at the BAFTAs, wasn't it? The BAFTA tea.
It might have been the Thursday. I think we met before then.
Audi party, maybe I can't remember. It was early on in the weekend, I feel like, and I was so nervous, and you had allowed me to latch myself onto both of you.
Were as statuesque as the Eiffel Tower. And by that, what I mean is she was 10 feet tall, listeners out there.
10 feet tall.
Including the wig. I mean, maybe scratching 11.
That's my real hair, Allegra.
Jared, I need to start taking more biotin supplements because that was amazing. And we saw you and I went, "Oh my God, it's Nina West!" And so we ran over because we're such huge fans of Drag Race. And we were really rooting for you. In our hearts, you're in our hearts. And no offense to everybody else, but in our hearts, you were the winner.
Well, thanks. Can I ask what is it about Drag Race that you love? Like, what about that show for you both is something that makes you want to watch?
I'm an old club kid, and I built a million nightclubs, and building my empire in Miami. It's not a party at all unless there's at least one drag queen there. And so, like among my greatest friends are drag queens and like extreme show people, and I just get so happy when I see people who are leading their best life. And the drag queens that I know, even though they're wonderful people, when they're out of drag, when they're in drag, they are who they really are. Like that's like on the part of their soul that they want to show people. And so I just love people like that. So I've always loved the show. And I've always, I used to be a club kid before I got into lighting and blah, blah. And I'm in my natural element around those people. And then, Jared, how do you feel?
The wit, that's what gets me.
Yeah.
The fast wits, the repartee, the idea that people can say some pretty, zinging things to each other, and it doesn't devolve into violence, which I find extraordinarily commendable. Because normally, the background that I come from is like people say a couple of those things to each other, and before you know it, you're pulling them apart from each other. And I look at this and I go, "Oh, this is so much more entertaining." It's funny. People are, you just have to be used to the idea that you've got to be, either you come back with it or you have to have a thick skin and let stuff bounce off of you.
Yeah. That is kind of true of the drag community. You have to really develop that and kind of like really foster the growth of that thick skin and kind of just carry it with you, because otherwise you're not going to be strong enough to make it.
But witty comebacks are what everyone wishes they had in their back pocket constantly, and there are very few people who do it in real time. Most people, something happens and then you go away, and either 20 seconds later or 20 minutes later or 20 days later you're like, oh, I should have said, that's what I should have said. And then when you tell the story, you lie and you go, that is what you said. But there are very few people who actually do it in real time. Allegra's one of them.
Yeah, I'm zippy.
I can tell that.
I try to be. I'm like such a dad. It's like, yeah, that was funny.
Well, you're really nice. Like, you're genuinely kind and nice. Like, you're a good person. I never claimed to be a good person. I'm nice most of the time, unless somebody really had it coming, and then I can't stop myself, because you should tell the truth to people. Period.
Yeah, I believe that. Have you ever found yourselves in a situation where you've been on a job or at a gig and you do actually tell somebody the truth?
All the time. But the great thing about being a lighting designer and director is I don't have to work with people mostly. Like, I work with my machines. They're my people. I have to deal with, directors or party event promoters or DJs or club owners or whatever. But the thing is, if I press a button, an entire city block of lights will go out. So you really don't want to cross this wrong side of me. But I have a really good reputation for being, calm and professional. But like, I remember I built a nightclub out here, and it was run by a bunch of idiots. And after being in nightlife for 25 years, I was like, not having it from these people. I'm too old. And so one of these idiots actually came up to my lighting booth one night, and he was trying to like swing his, well, not literally, but figuratively, swing his dick around. And I wasn't paying attention to him because I was running the giant, ridiculous light show. And because he was trying to impress me, he pulled a gun out of nowhere and put it down next to my lighting controller. And I just looked at it. Now, my dad is a Marine. I grew up, in a house where we know how to defend ourselves. I just looked at it, and I looked at him, and I said, is the safety on? And he just looked at me sheepishly. I'm like, do you know that thing has a safety? And he just was like, and I said, look, like, I can take that thing apart in 30 seconds without looking at it. So get that thing out of my face. I'm in the middle of something, like, working. What's the matter with you? And like, you shouldn't have that. And I just told him off. I'm like, get out of my face with that bullshit. Nobody cares. And so he just left.
Yeah, it does get to a point where sometimes, if you have a gun pulled on you, maybe just
he pulled it out like it was like to distract me. He didn't point it at me or anything. He just put it down. But I was like, what the fuck? Are you serious? People are really dumb.
I agree.
Stupid. That is dumb. That's
my mantra.
Be all heartened to know I left that job about 11-ish years ago, and when I do have the unfortunate circumstance to make eye contact with that moron in public, he looks at me in fear and turns and walks the other way.
I would.
I saw him at one of the Emmy parties, and he knows not to come over here.
Now,
when you don't know what to do with that story, but it's
I think in my business, the truth is particularly welcome, really.
Well, as an actor, it has to be, right? I mean,
in the work,
it's important, but in the workplace, it's interesting because you have to be very diplomatic in how one says, and the times when one is frustrated and you lose your patience and say, something isn't ideal or isn't the best version of itself. What I've learned, actually, I'd say that if you're going to criticize somebody or something that you're working on, always have a solution. It isn't helpful to point out a problem like this line sucks or this scene doesn't make any sense, or that piece of direction is ludicrous. You want to have a better solution, but actually you can never say that if somebody's giving you direction. The best thing to do if someone gives you direction that doesn't make sense is nod and go and do what you were going to do anyway, and then look at them and go something like that, as though what you were doing was inspired by what they said. And they would generally go, yes, perfect.
Do you feel like that as an actor, those were things you had to learn quickly on the job? Because,
I mean, you've no power as an actor. You're at the bottom of the rock. You're
unless you're a big star.
Unless you're a big star, but very, 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 very 0.001% are of all the actors that are there. So you have to learn how to be diplomatic. You have to learn how to, be cooperative. You want to create a space where you can try out your ideas without it being challenging to the director, because of course, so many people watching, and everyone's so aware. On a film set, the best analogy I have for a film set is it's like a medieval kingdom, and the director is the king. The producer is the emissary from Rome who can cause a lot of trouble for the king. And then the actors and various people are sort of advisors, but it's a little fiefdom that's all centers around the director. And so it's very much status is incredibly important. Everyone's incredibly aware of status, and how you handle that and respond to that and negotiate that status can mean whether you get fired or not.
Well, that makes me want to ask though, how do you then be your best advocate in times when you're playing that delicate balance of being both, you're to advocate for yourself in these situations because you want the work and you want the job, but right, so how do you negotiate that?
If you figure out quickly whether you're working with somebody who's interested in working with other people, and if they are, then you can start to figure out what kind of dialogue you can have that is not not threatening either to the director or the writer, in terms of the things that you're trying to change or questions that you're asking. I mean, sometimes even questions are irritating and they don't want you to ask questions. If dialogue, if you're not in an environment where that's appreciated or people are interested in it, you just got to do it yourself. You got to work it out yourself, and you got to make sure you're prepared, and present ideas in real time. I think the other thing about it is you should never ask for permission to have an imagination. You should do it. You must do it and then see what the response is. If you discuss an idea, then you run the risk of threatening their authority by doing it anyway if they said they didn't like it. So it's better just to do it and then see how they feel about it.
Has that ever been an experience for you? I know it has, but I'm just trying to get to some stuff that I'd love to know about. Have you ever had that experience on a set where you were forced really to rely on your own creativity and really have you had a bad experience that pushed you to produce something that different? Like your laugh with less mean.
Of course. I mean, sometimes though, yes, is the answer is, but more often in theatre than in film, because in theatre you've got this long period of rehearsal, and it feels as though quite often theatre directors have less patience with actors than film or TV directors. Mostly, those guys are under so much pressure to make their day that if you can make something work, they're happy. They're grateful that you could pull. You've shown up with an idea and you can basically do something that's usable in the first take. Then everything's gravy after that, rather than it's not working and then you have to figure out why it's not working. If you just make it work right away, thank you. But sometimes there are things that you don't want to do because you have it in your mind it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it's uncomfortable is what's going to be interesting to watch on screen, and you should just do it because something's going to happen whilst you're in the middle of doing something that doesn't make sense to you, and maybe that's the reason why the writer put it there, is to sort of put you through the eye of the needle.
One of my favorite things about watching Jared's career and going to visit him on set and stuff is when he's working with younger actors. The younger actors, a lot of them don't seem to know that they have that sort of power to be able to have a voice.
Well, you're allowed to have an imagination. We are creative agents within the process.
The kids, I've seen you mentor these kids because you have one foot, in a barrel filled with confidence, and another foot in a barrel filled with, know-how to be able to marry those two and get your point across. And usually the kids, don't feel like they have that power. They feel like they're easily replaceable, and whatever. I mean, when they see how Jared deals with it, they learn, and then they gain that sort of, know how to convey their thoughts that way. And that's one of the things that I love about him, is that he does that for people.
Do you enjoy working with younger actors? Do you feel like you fall easily into a mentor role, Jared?
I don't really feel like only very occasionally, but I don't feel like I'm sort of consciously doing that.
You're the best.
Thank you. Mostly we're all there trying to do the same thing. I think that's the other thing, because of that status thing on film sets.
Yeah,
it also bleeds in towards the actors, and I think that's not helpful. And was one of the things, for example, that I really respected about working with Mark Rylance was that you're all part of a company, and your main actor's job is to lead that company, and you lead by example. John Hamm did a good job of that as well. And but the idea that you're all in it together, and you're all the same status, everyone needs to do their best work for everybody else to succeed, and you want to make that possible by giving people their confidence and their platform to do it. You don't want to terrify people and then say, right, now be free and be open and be vulnerable.
Right. It doesn't work that way.
Now we're gonna do a take for
fun. Do you have people you've worked with like a lot of times, or do you have like those collaboration, like moments of collaboration that were really good, like you've been talking about?
There are people I would love to work with a lot, but we're not in control of that. We're not.
Right.
We're not in the casting process. So
you've worked with Brad Pitt a few times, and Guy Ritchie a few times.
Yes.
Who else? You've worked with the lady from Happiness a couple times.
Oh, Jane. Yeah.
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 We're playing Jared Harris trivia for all of you listening.
So you don't get to choose on that one.
But you are young. You have had this remarkable career, and this truthfully, like you have a career that people would really, honestly kill for. You have, but it shows just how talented and how good you are and how true you are to the work.
Did you have to die to get this career, darling?
I know, it's
like literally on screen many times.
5,000 death scenes.
But the thing about that is, a good death scene is very useful. Like if your character's made an impact and then your character dies, people remember it. It's bad for the career because it's different. It's bad for employment because you keep having to look for a new job.
I thought you liked that. I thought that's why you did it, so you could always be on to the next step.
But it's useful in the sense that it makes an impact in the story. If the character's been used in that way and they want the death of that character to resonate with the audience.
The amount of different ways that your characters have died. What's interesting is, if you scan socials, as I do, how people fixate on the hangings, because that's only happened twice, whereas Jared's been shot to death at least 17 times.
But you have to have, like you said, an imagination, and for your death to be like memorable and to be pivotal, it's got to be great. Has any one experience been better than another? Not in death, of course, but
enjoyable.
Yeah, which death? No, but like which experience as an audience member can I go back and watch you act and do your gift and your talent and feel like this is the moment. This is the moment that you're expressing your highest imagination, or like where you were so dialed in and so tuned in.
We just watched The Terror recently because we thought perfect viewing. It's a story about people trapped in an environment they can't get out of with dwindling food resources. and no clear knowledge of when they're going to get out of it. We thought that's perfect. Let's watch the terror.
Rewatch that.
We rewatched the terror. I was very proud of that. It was a really smart show. We had a good company. We had a good relationship with the showrunners and the cast, and it was really smart storytelling, and beautiful as well in terms of its the cinematography and the direction,
the sound and the lighting.
Yeah, it was. I think that was a special one, the terror.
I think it's.
Do you think that your training in theater has made you better for TV and film?
I mean, I remember being at drama school and in England, and the thing was, you always did Shakespeare in every term, and so you'd sort of start to think that maybe Shakespeare was the sort of cornerstone of the training, but it wasn't. Yeah. It was Restoration comedy. Restoration comedy was the cornerstone because they said if you can figure out how to make this work, you can do anything. And the characters were huge characters, and which they could devolve into caricatures if you weren't careful, but they had to have that larger than life element to them. I mean, they were just in terms of the way they appeared, they
almost like drag.
Incredible outfits on and these huge wigs. And they were covered in, white makeup with sort of red lipstick and fake beauty marks on them and giant.
Very
Is this sounding familiar?
No, Jared, have you done drag before? It sounds like.
Oh, Charlie, tell him.
No, I haven't.
Well, you sort of did a little adjacent drag in Igby Goes Down. You had at least guy liner on.
Oh, Igby Goes Down, yeah.
He had guy liner and feathers and a mesh shirt.
Yeah, was that
well,
drag?
he was more new romantic pseudo gay.
Yeah, no,
I have
wasn't drag. I dressed up as a woman in it was a movie called Lush, and it was set in New Orleans. And they had an upside down party, which is men came as women and women came as men, and the furniture was nailed to the ceiling, so we all had to dress up for that. That was pretty shocking.
Did you shave?
Yeah. I was not attractive. All I can say is I saw myself and I went, wow, I would cross the road to get away from you.
Wow. That means you looked like menacing.
I just did not. I looked like some sort of. I can't even describe.
You had a bad walk.
Like. It really looked shockingly. I was very disappointed as well, actually. When I looked at it, I thought I
bet Nina could give you an amazing drag.
I'm sure we could give you a makeover, but if I were to give you a makeover, I would have to know what your drag name would be. We're not going to do this just for shits and giggles. We need a drag name.
How did you come up with yours, Nina?
I think it was Nina Simone. Was the right hand, and then the West was from the direction my mother was facing when she gave birth to me. I'm just kidding. It's from my drag mother. It's from the direction I was conceived in.
Well, your mother was paying attention. Wow.
Yeah, I was facing west. Did you? What would your drag name be? If you had a drag name, Jared, what would it be?
I have no idea. I don't even know how you do it. I know how you pick your porn name, right? By the name of your pet,
first pet and the street that you grew up on.
The street that you lived on. So I'd be...
It also doubles as a drag name. I will have you know it doubles as a drag name.
I'd be Dodger Bedford.
I would go see her. I would pay to see her. She sounds great.
She sounds like a performer.
Dodger Bedford.
All right.
Yeah, but that would be the same for my brothers as well, right?
The triplets, the
Dodger Bedford brothers.
The Dodger Bedford
brothers.
Sisters.
That's the first thing you have to get used to about drag. We actually asked ahead for some. I'm sorry. We actually asked ahead for some listener questions.
They're out at the same time, so they're going to pause for listener questions.
No, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we were talking at the same time. Yeah, we had some questions from listeners, and one was, what for both of you? What one piece of advice would you give your younger selves?
Oh, that's funny. Let's see. Don't shave your eyebrows off completely.
So many
Because
people answer that.
that was an accident that happened to me when in 1993 I was attempting modeling in South Beach, and I booked a national contact lens gig, and they went to go and they're like, we're going to shave your eyebrows off, and I'm 18. I'm like, what do you mean you're going to shave my eyebrows off? And by the way, I already had kind of pencil thin eyebrows because it was the 90s. And so we can't shave my eyebrows off. And they said, look, your face is our canvas, and if you don't want your face to be our canvas,
Oh,
then we'll
no.
find someone else. So they shaved my eyebrows completely off, and whenever somebody shows an old picture of me, you can definitely see that. But depending on the day, depending on the liner I was using, it was a completely different face. But it was great in the club days, because in the club days, I would use like crystals or feathers, and I would glue them on. And I mean, there were 4 whole years of my life I didn't leave my house without being covered in glitter and in some sort of outfit, because I was a club kid. So, and then it was a miracle that they grew back, because all the little old ladies on South Beach, I would rollerblade up to them in my gold bikini with my angel wings and my and my beeper on my hip, and they'd be like, "Oh, you draw your eyebrows on just like us." It was Clara Bow when we were growing up, and we all like shaved our eyebrows off, and then they never grew back. They never grew back, and yours won't either. And I went, "Damn you! I'm Italian and Indian. They'll grow back." And eventually they did, and so I'm very happy with that.
Well, thank God.
Congratulations.
You also sounded like, for a brief moment, like you were about to open up the film Xanadu. So I was like very into
Oh my
it.
God, I love that movie. I have the album.
Oh, that's good.
What's your story, dear?
Jared,
I don't know. Put more money on 17 Black. I walked through a casino once. We did a movie called Father's Day, and I worked with Louis Lombardi. Who's this lovely man, and wonderful actor, and a writer and a producer. And he said, "Jared, every time I go through a casino," he says, I always win. I put money on 17 Black. Every time I put money on 17 Black, I always win." So we were going back to our hotel, and we're in Reno. So you walk through the casino to get to the lifts to your room. And as we walked past this casino, I just went, "What the hell?" And I put money down on 17 Black. And he goes, "Chad, what are you doing?" He goes, "It's crazy." Bang, it came up.
Oh,
so
my.
I would go back to that moment and just go, "Put it all on."
That's
17
amazing.
Black. I'm going to bet on 17 Black next.
Oh, I have a question. Can we invert that question and have Jared give advice to young Allegra, and me give advice to young Jared?
Please.
Oh, yeah.
I know what I would say to young Jared.
What would you say?
I would say Americans love gingers.
Okay.
So come
True.
to America sooner, because the British can be a bit hard on the redheads, but we love our redheads.
Well, yeah, I did. I went to Duke University.
That's right. Well, did you learn that girls like redheads, or people like redheads?
They.
Oh, that was only when you met me?
Yeah.
I've always had a thing for redheads. All right, that's just something about me.
Yeah.
I love a redhead, Jared.
You are a redhead a lot of the time.
I know.
Gingers are they get it in England.
They
don't get it. They get
Oh, they get it.
They get flack.
Not it. They get that.
They get flack in England. Yeah.
Oh, flack. No, they get it. Yeah. But over in the States, you can get it.
Yeah. What happened when I went to Duke? No, not really.
Jared came over to America to go to university.
I went to Duke University, and
picture it, 1980.
Yeah. I remember I showed up, and I only had 2 pairs of shoes. I had 1 pair of black shoes, and I had a pair of sneakers, and I didn't know anything about how one worked out being at college, or that there wasn't a shop you could buy stuff at college. And my left black shoe died, and my right sneaker shoe died. So the only pair I could put together was an odd mix of one and the other. Then I figured out that you had to go to this thing called a mall to get shoes. What is a mall? And I asked, they said, "Oh yeah, there's a mall. It's about 4 miles away." "Well, how do you get there?" Because you have to go there in your car. I don't have a car. I don't know. What the hell? So then you try and figure out how you're going to, somebody you know is going to have a car. Well, you're a freshman. No one's got a car. So it took me about 4 or 5 weeks to find someone to give me a lift to buy a new pair of shoes. And when I got my new pair of shoes, and the next day I wore them and I was going to class, and I saw 2 girls walk past me, clock me, and then as they just passed, he went, oh my God, he put on a new pair of shoes. Look, he put on a new pair of shoes. So I was obviously that weird freak with the 2 mixed match pairs of shoes who wore them.
Who talked funny.
Who talked funny with red hair.
Oh my God.
We've all been there.
That's your charm, Jared. That's your charm.
I'll take you to the mall, darling. Well, maybe if they let us out of the house, I'll take you back to the mall.
I remember, so I think it was probably in the second year, maybe it was the third year of Duke, we did this Ionesco play called The Bald Soprano. It was an absurdist play. And I played the fire chief, and I decided that I grew a moustache and then shaved one half of it off. So, but you do the play for a whole week. So for a whole week, I walked around college just with one half of a moustache. And by then I was going out to the shops and buying stuff and everything. And the looks on people's faces when they would see like, does he know he's only got half a moustache? I mean, did the other side fall off? I mean, what happened? It was, that part I really enjoyed. By then I didn't care,
Was this at the same time you were wearing mismatched shoes?
No, I think the experience with the mismatched shoes gave me the confidence to go, what the fuck? Like 2 years later, it doesn't matter. I have no reputation to salvage.
Respectable, very respectable.
We had one more listener question that I thought would be of note for both. Now that we're in this really unique history and period of our lives, we're all kind of looking for these distractions. Do you have a favorite author or a book that means a lot to you that you could recommend to Team Harris or to the rest of our listeners?
I got several books that favorite books. One of them is a book that Michael Crichton wrote called Travels. Michael Crichton wrote Jurassic Park, Andromeda Strain. He wrote many, many very successful books. And so this though was a fact. What do you call it? Not factional. It wasn't fiction, and it's about his experiences through his life, and it's just recorded in such in an interesting sort of clinical way, because he started out life as a scientist. He was trained as a medical student and a doctor. And the journeys start off as being sort of life journeys, but then they kind of drift into, he becomes interested to see, while he's making a movie in London, there was a psychic center in Belgrave Square that he heard about, and he went there to go and bring his analytical scientific mind to see, is there anything to this? So he analyzes that. He goes on some really hilarious metaphysical journeys as well as some really interesting journeys around the world. He climbs Kilimanjaro, goes swimming with sharks. He visits the gorillas in the Virunga forest, and they're really interesting tales. Each one they're not just facts. There's this personal journey that occurs as well. You were asking us about books that we would suggest
for the apocalypse.
Yes.
I was watching Rita Wilson sing "Hip Hop Hooray" yesterday in this viral video, and she was reading Ender's Game, which is an amazing book, which was turned into a film, which didn't have the scope of the book, and I was like, oh, that's such a good book. So if anybody loves sci-fi, it's an amazing Ender's Game. It's so good. I mean, you wouldn't. It was suggested to me twice in the same day by 2 different people years ago, and I was like, well, I gotta read it now, because these were people that I respected, and I couldn't put it down. And so when the movie came out and it got not so great reviews, I just didn't watch it because I didn't want it to besmirch my love of the book. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
But I was at the Miami Book Fair a few months ago, and I went to go see Debbie Harry speak, and I picked up her autobiography. And John Waters was speaking, so I went and I got him to sign my book. And so I read those two autobiographies, and he said, "Honey, how do you want me to sign? What do you want me to write in your book?" And I said, "Just say eat shit." I love biographies and autobiographies because I love people so much, and in our quarantine state, a great way to get to know the people who you respect or are interested in is to read about their lives.
Absolutely,
I agree, 100%.
Yeah, those are.
Nina,
I
when's your
love
book coming out?
My book, I need a little bit more life in me still. After you and I, after we all have a brunch together, which I've been promised, then I'll write my book.
Yes. Yes, I've already been shopping for the post-COVID-19 decompression brunch, where we'll all have stories to tell.
Oh, we
about,
certainly
the hobbies we've acquired. Patricia, are you looking forward to doing something that you've always wanted to do but put off?
Well, that's such a good question.
That's a way better question than yeah, you know what? I am, and it is like being in my house is going to force me to clean it a lot better than I normally do. Just like you look around and leave. Where
are you?
We're in Nina's house right now in Columbus, Ohio.
Wonderful.
In Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to have you. We'll have to have you both over to visit.
I can't wait.
The next time you're in Ohio, for what reason, I don't know.
My acting teacher lives in Columbus, Ohio.
What's his name?
Oh, really?
Dick Ormiller.
Dick Ormiller.
Huh. Oh well, I will keep your eye out.
I'm Dick Ormiller. Now I'm gonna have to look him up because
Is that the gentleman you took on the red carpet?
Yes. So this is.
You're gonna like this.
So he cast me in the first play that I did at Duke. It was an Agatha Christie play called A Murder Is Announced. And then years later, I Shot Andy Warhol is premiering in New York. So I said, "Why don't you come?" He's now living in New York at that time. And I said, come to the premiere, be my guest at the premiere, and walk the red carpet with me. It'll be a great story. You asked me in my first play, and here I am at my premiere. This is a great story. And so we're walking out the red carpet, and this journalist sort of finally asked the right question to him and says, "So you cast him in your first play?" Yes, I did. You must be so proud of him. Oh, yes, I am. Yes, so you must have seen some great talent in him all those years ago. Did you see something special in him all those years ago that led to this day? And he said, "No, I didn't see anything in him at all. I was doing an English play and I needed someone to keep an eye on the accents." And the ironic thing about that is the review for the play came out in the Duke newspaper, and the review said, "A Murder Is Announced, another hit from Dick Ormiller. The play moves lively along. The mystery is well concealed and contained within the story. All the characters are believable. And by and large, all the English accents are well done, all except for Jared Harris's, whose accent seems improbable."
What do they know? Fuck them.
It's a testimony to, this is, there's a lot of people who are born with it, as they say, and then there's a lot of people who do the hard work. And, like Jared, he's worked extremely hard and for a while. And so I'm just so proud of him. After that first review to have come this far.
I'm like the David Beckham of actors.
Was David Beckham
not born with it, but worked very hard?
Maybe you're born with it. Maybe you're Beckham.
Yeah, David Beckham.
Yeah.
You have to understand this. Us ignorant Americans probably were, used to hearing a bad English accent done by a bad American accent mimic, so you didn't know the real thing.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I've got that review downstairs in the garage. I was so it made me laugh so much.
Trust me, I'm going to be Googling for it later. Before we go, which first of all, I want to thank you both for your time.
Thank you for
having us.
I love you both so much. Before we go, we always end our podcast with kind of a good vibes, something that makes us feel good or put a little bit of positivity out into the world. Is there something you two are this amazing, incredible couple that have been able to find so much strength and love and joy in one another, and you celebrate that with #Team Harris all the way.
Team Harris.
What is a good vibe that you both could share with us before we go?
You want to go first?
Try and work it out. We'll see. A good vibe. What do you think?
My name is Allegra. It basically means good vibes in Italian.
Yeah, no, but a good vibe that other people can
be heartened by,
or practice or something, or
it's kind of however you want to answer it. Is something that makes you feel good, or something that you can impart to others.
Chocolate is an excellent answer.
Yeah, chocolate. I like chocolate. I like Allegra and I have this very sweet custom that we do, which is before a meal we always give each other a kiss instead of saying grace.
Oh,
you guys. Let's see, another cute Team Harris thing. Whenever we have the unfortunate circumstance where one of us stays at home and the other one goes out to say do an errand or buy toilet paper if you can find it these days, we do this thing where let's say I was leaving. Jared will stand at the top of the doorway because we have stairs leading down to the street. So he'll stand there and we'll have a little kiss. And then I get halfway down the stairs and I turn around and I wave at him. And he waves back. And it gets to the bottom of the stairs and I turn around and wave at him again. That started because a friend of mine sadly transitioned a few years ago, and it was so sad. I never wanted to take my eyes off of Jared. I wanted him to stay safe in my gaze. So whenever we leave the house, we always make sure to really, really look at each other because, it warms my heart. But you just never know.
I think little acts of kindness go a long way.
Yeah, like our lovely elderly neighbor who's 103, whose house was the first one built on this hill, sent over her daughter today with fresh oranges from her orchard in the back and fresh strawberries because she wanted to make sure we had vitamin C.
I think I think it's important. Little acts of kindness are, they alter people's mindset.
Jared makes tea every morning. And then I offer to trim his nose hair almost every other day.
It doesn't grow that fast.
It's like a week.
It's like Seymour from the Little Shop of Horrors. Feed me.
It's like a tiny. It's like a tiny Audrey 2 coming out of either nostril every other day, going. Bah!
That's what I said.
We're getting close to happening in each ear.
Hey. Oh my!
No, I'm not sure that's
my favorite.
But we're very giggly, and surround yourself with giggly people because that will always make you smile.
Laughter is revenge.
Revenge. Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having us, you guys. It was really fantastic speaking to you both, and lovely to meet you, Patricia.
Yeah. Lovely to meet both of you. Thanks again so much for being here.
Jared. Lunch in Ohio.
That's right. And brunch.
Yeah.
We'll get dinner in someplace, probably Miami, and we can go clubbing afterwards.
Hawaii, so we can keep going south.
We're going to have an occasion.
West.
There will be time for occasions.
Where's your mind at, Jared? Wanting to go south? Thank you both so very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Bless you both.
Happy apocalypse.
Happy apocalypse.
Happy apocalypse. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Allegra. Always Team Harris.
Team Harris.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for enjoying this very special episode of DragCast with Nina West. If you have questions, send us an email at dragcastpodcast@gmail.com. Patricia and I both get those emails. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned for this Friday's episode featuring the incredibly funny Fortune Feimster. Listen on Spotify or wherever fine podcasts are played. Bye.